Welcome to The Chair. I'm your host, Dr. Digby James Wren, and today we're going to be talking about the 48-hour ultimatum delivered by Donald Trump to Iran. And there's 24 hours remaining, and of course everybody would like to be able to predict the outcome, what is going to happen. But let's just start with the general pundits who seem to believe that, and I think this is the generally held view now, is that no matter what the US does, it's going to be some kind of a failure. So far it is a failure, and they have not achieved their stated objectives. They have not been able to destroy ballistic missile launches. They have not been able to stop, I think, the manufacture as well, or maintenance of weapons, and they have not been able to destroy or find the 400 kilos, or it might be 400 pounds, whatever that is in kilos, I have no idea, of uranium. And so now the latest news, of course, is that the US is sending helicopter carriers plus 2,500 man expeditionary force made up of Marines and special operations, so forth and so on, Delta, Rangers, SEALs, I don't know, all of those things that you see in the movies. But in the movies they never lose, but I think, to be perfectly honest with my audience, I want to tell you that I think there's a 20% chance the Americans can achieve some of their stated objectives, and that Trump could call a victory on the 20%. But I think there's an 80% chance that the Iranians are going to be able to hold on to Hormuz, or because they don't actually have to physically mine it or even have ships in the water all the time. All they have to do is make sure that Lloyd's of London can't insure, or other insurers won't insure boats to go through. On the other hand, if everybody wants to pay in yuan for their oil, then they can go through. And any country that does that and makes an agreement with the Iranians is allowed through. So, of course, with the exception of those that launch attacks or are used by the Americans for launching attacks, or used by the Israelis for launching attacks. Now, the Israelis don't import any oil from the region, basically, and the Americans don't need it either. Donald Trump has said so. The Americans produce more than enough oil for their own needs in real terms. They import and export, but actually they don't really need to worry about that. And, of course, the Americans now have virtual control over Venezuelan oil. Now, if they can get control over Iranian oil, that will deliver to them some kind of energy supply chain control, because they'll have effective control over Hormuz, which means not just Iranian oil, but it also means Kuwaiti, Bahraini, Qatari, Saudi. All of those will have their supply guaranteed, one imagines. But actually Iran will do the same if they agree to get rid of the US bases that are attacking them. So this is a bit of a conundrum, isn't it? And so look, it's clearly in no one's favor in the West Asia to have Iran collapse. It will destabilize the entire region. And personally, I just don't think that's going to happen. As I said, I think there's an 80% chance the Iranians are going to hold it together, at least in the short term. Now, in the medium term, the problem is that if they do come to an arrangement, a negotiated arrangement of some kind with Israel and with the United States, and the way to achieve that is through the Hormuz thing, and also by the use of their missiles, selective use of missiles, targets, and drones, and so forth, and they've demonstrated that they can get through all of the interceptors and so forth. They've been able to do that, especially with these new Sigil missiles, Mach 11, I think it is. I mean, just Mach 7, I think, and then they've got an even newer one which can do Mach 15. Mach 11. So the use of these missiles effectively sets a ring, a cordon, or a protective ring around Iran of about 1,500 kilometers, perhaps a little bit longer. They do have some longer range missiles. And equally, this is true for the Israelis. The Israelis also can reach basically from the Nile, and I mean upstream, I don't mean in Egypt, I mean the Nile as in from where it starts, Victoria Falls. Basically, they can get from the Nile all the way up to the Euphrates River, and then dominate and then have a corridor through Syria and Iraq to Iran. Now, what the Americans want to do, of course, here is ensure that the Israelis become a regional hegemon, that they have the security, guarantee the security from the Nile to the Euphrates. So the Red Sea, East Africa, the mouth to the Indian Ocean, the Suez Canal, the Eastern Mediterranean, and also the supply chains that go through Jordan, Syria, Iraq. They also are within, and Lebanon. I'm sorry, I forgot about Lebanon. They effectively have air superiority, missile superiority, and on the ground, tanks and so forth, and all that sort of terrestrial military equipment. And they have a very powerful army with a potential of, say, 500,000 men. They've mobilized 100,000 men for operations in Lebanon against Hezbollah, but Hezbollah is still active and still launching missiles. So they haven't been able to do that, and they haven't got rid of Hamas either, and nor have they got rid of the Houthis. But one needs to remember that it's the Iranians are not. I mean, it's an outright lie to say that this is the greatest source of terror in the world. I mean, that is just a label. There is actually no evidence for that. If anybody would if anybody can come to that conclusion, then they looked at the Israeli situation, well, they would say the same thing. That Israel is basically conducting terrorist operations, assassinating leaders, assassinating officials, just political assassination. This is a kind of terrorism. And this is a naked aggression by the US and Israel. They started it, and I'm surprised sometimes to see headlines in the media, not just American media, but in European media, that start with Iran's attacks. And it's just like, yes, Iran is responding to the aggression, and it has all rights to defend itself. This is clear. It is the Americans and the Israelis that are breaking all of the rules, the rules-based order, and suspending all kind of legalities and multilateral forums, negotiations and real diplomacy. And in fact, they've shown that diplomacy has been their cover. Now, look, all's fair in love and war, as they say, but this is in the 21st century, where basically everybody who's got a mobile phone and an internet connection can access pretty well any information globally. It seems very silly to be able to try to manipulate the narratives in the way that they are. And I've also want to mention the fact that it seems now that the Israelis and the Americans are conducting censorship of their media, whether it's private or state or semi-state or some other kind of public funding. They're censoring all of the media. And Pete Hegseth has just been told that it's not constitutional what he was asking them to do, which was to be more patriotic. But really what he was asking them to do was lie to the public, not to the global public, but to the American public. And here is the real problem, isn't it? I mean, we're in a situation where the Americans are conducting aggression, wars, interventions, kidnappings, assassinations, murder, outside of all of this, yet at the same time they're still pretending that they're the good guys. Now, Donald Trump is basically turning into a tyrant. So American hegemony is falling apart. And he is convinced that he is the Roman emperor. Donald the Great is going to make territorial conquests and resource acquisition and conquest a means by which to balance the American economy, their balance sheet. He's adding resources and territory as wealth to balance their economy. And it can work. And to do this, he needs control of Venezuelan oil, Iranian oil, Cuba, Greenland, possibly Colombia. I think that's something going on there. We need to be very careful about Colombia, keep a very close eye on that. And also, there's evidence of new activities in Cambodia, Laos, Thailand, Myanmar especially, and the Philippines, of course, and other parts of Asia, Southeast Asia. More weapons to Taiwan, of course, all that sort of thing. So, Trump, basically, if he fails on this one, if he's seen to have failed, then it's almost certain that he will lose both the Senate and the House in the midterm elections, and then he will become a lame duck. Now, and if that happens, then he could be impeached. And I think this has to be the fear in his mind. So he has to deliver a victory. Now, he's already planned this. Everybody who thinks he just made up his mind like a couple of weeks ago to do this because Netanyahu convinced him to do it, has also not thought about the idea that he announced that he's going to build a triumphal arch, a victory arch, like the Arc de Triomphe in Paris. And why would he need to do that? Well, he needs a victory, right? No, he wasn't able to get a peace prize, but so now he's decided he needs to be the all-conquering emperor, Donald the Great of the United States, of Manhattan. So he's all in on this. Now, I've read many reports in all global press, French press, American press, German press, English press, Chinese press, saying that J.D. Vance was not on board with this, advised against it. Marco Rubio was not on board, advised against it. His chief of staff, Wiles, also advised against it, and many others. On the other hand, you've got the Israeli lobby, and they're all in for Israel, and that's what they say. But really, they're all in for the US and Israel. If Israel will do their dirty work for them, well, then why not? All they have to do is give them money and guns. They don't actually have to put American troops. There's no blood and treasure. No blood, only treasure. So, to achieve this goal of hegemony in West Asia, to guarantee those supply chains, trade routes, that's what they want control of, and specifically energy, but also just normal container traffic, all that sort of stuff. And where that's going to go, we'll discuss a little bit later. But what this really means is that once that's achieved, and Israel has that power, which it virtually has now, and that may increase depending on the outcome of this 48-hour ultimatum and what happens afterward. But it would allow the Americans to then reposition their forces towards the Pacific. And if they can't, because if you want the 21st century, you need to control the Pacific, because that's where all the economic growth is. We're in all of the CPTPP countries, so the Rim, the Pacific Rim, and including China, of course, and so Indo-Pacific, possibly with India as well. So that will be that's the medium to long-term objective. In the shorter term, Iran is the soft underbelly for Russia and Central Asia, and clearly you can see that there will be color revolutions, Georgia, Armenia. That's going to be clear. The Americans will try to partition Iran with the Kurds and with other groups within Arabic-speaking groups in the south, the Kurdish groups in the north, and other groups in the west. I don't think that's going to work. Iran is unlike any of the countries that America has invaded post-World War II. It's much bigger. It's more than 90 million people. It is civilizational. It has never been fully colonized. It was never fully colonized, ever. I mean, it's been invaded and taken over by the Muslims in the 700s, 800s, but to create, they created a great empire. But it's never been colonized, and that is true also for Russia and China. Well, you can see a pattern here, can't you? That Europe and the Americans fear the three countries they've not been able to, the three civilizations that they've not been able to colonize completely. So that is very problematic for them, and I think that is a very deep kind of motivation going on here. But Iran would be the soft underbelly, and it also, so Eurasia is now then let's say the Americans get some increased influence in Iran, then Russia is at risk. The whole region is at risk. And then Pakistan, Baluchistan, one has to worry about that very much. Obviously, the Indians have an interest in this as well. They hate Pakistan, clearly. If they can find an alternative means, if Iranian power is reduced slightly, India is not going to worry too much. So, because they don't need direct access, although I think, the historical and civilizational binds between Persia, Iran and India are so strong. There's fundamentally, very deep roots there. So that also needs to be taken into consideration. I think this is, as I said before, a 20% chance that the Americans can succeed in all their objectives, 80% chance the Iranians are going to get some kind of status quo. I don't know if you can call it a status quo, but let's call it a Pyrrhic defeat, a Pyrrhic victory, sorry. I think the Americans are looking for a Pyrrhic victory. That's what they're going to get, and Trump needs to call a victory, as we discussed. He needs his arch, and he needs to get some kind of a better response out of the midterm elections other than becoming a lame duck. So this is the risk internally, domestically, and I'm not even talking about the economic problems, about the markets, about debt, about private credit, inflation, treasuries being sold off. All of these are structural problems within the American economy. They cannot be fixed easily. Resource acquisition and territorial acquisition is one way to balance all of that, the 39 trillion of debt. But in the short to medium term, it's not going to solve the midterm election problem. So Trump is really against it here, up against the wall, between a rock and a hard place, so he has to find a way through. He's looking for that, but he has taken this on as his personal sort of campaign, like Caesar's Gaul campaign in Gaul, where he killed half the population or enslaved them. I think this is what Trump is thinking about. Now, he's taken the tariffs from McKinley, late 19th century, which led to American empire under Theodore Roosevelt, and the Gilded Age, so Gilded Age and then empire, the Great White Fleet, defeating the Spanish Empire, taking over Puerto Rico, Cuba, the Philippines. That is all still there. And that's what he's thinking about doing. He wants to be Theodore Roosevelt, and that's why he was going for the Nobel Peace Prize. Roosevelt got one for Russia-Japan. And he thought he could get that. So that slipped by him, and so I think there's very little chance now that he'll ever get that. But what he can get is this military victory. So he's an all-conquering war hero, led America to its greatest victory in the post-war period, of greater than Vietnam, better than Korea, and that's what he's looking for. He wants to be Donald the Great, and all of this is lined up like that. And so he's running this pretty well straight out of the Oval Office, and he is. It kind of reminds me of that film about Adolf Hitler called Downfall. It gives me this kind of a feeling that he's really overestimating and confused about really what American power really can do. And I think he really does not have a deep understanding of history or geography or culture or society of any of these countries or places. He really doesn't. The calculation is purely power and wealth, realist, totally realist, but in a very narcissistic way. Look, at this point, I would say that the problem for us to think about in real terms over the next 24 hours, and this is what I'm very worried about, the usage of small tactical nuclear weapons. I think there's a 20% chance of it happening, 80% chance it won't happen. But that chance is still there. I think that needs to be considered very carefully. Iran is a very large country, and a small tactical nuclear weapon may not pose too great a threat to its neighbours, but it still clearly, depending on winds and weather and so forth, radiation, there's all sorts of problems. And we just had the targeting of the 2 nuclear facilities, one Dimon in Israel and Natanz in Iran. Neither of them actually hit the complex, but they demonstrated that both Israel and Iran can do that if they seek to do it. So that's worrying in itself. Then the idea that that they're going to destroy power plants, transmission lines, oil lines, gas pipelines, water pipelines, desalination plants, internet, fiber optic, satellite communication, all of these things on the ground, airports, ports, logistics hubs, AI centers, data centers, all of those things are just open targets. And if Iran can hit 1 or 2 or 3 in each of the countries that has US bases that are used against them, well, that's a game changer, isn't it? So now, I don't think the European powers, although they're, in Australia, I think they're coming on board in a small way for Hormuz. That makes sense to them because they need the energy. Remember, this is kind of a replay of 1956 and the Suez, and France and France and England lost that. The UK lost that clearly because Eisenhower just didn't want to do it because the Americans don't really need it. So no, they're not going to get involved. So in this case, I think there's going to be overwhelming discussion in America about the fact that it's unnecessary to do this. But from the Iranian point of view, they think that the Israelis and the Americans will take whatever breathing space they can get to rearm, restock, replan, reconfigure, subversion, new agents on the ground, intelligence networks, etc., assassinations and so forth, and they'll just keep doing it. Netanyahu said his 40-year dream is to do this, right? So he's now convinced Trump to come on board for this. Trump saw that it could help him become Donald the Great, so off they go. We're not even mentioning the fact that, his sons are doing business with all of these people. It's all very, I think there's clear evidence of corruption here. And so the possibility for failure for Trump in this and for downfall is entirely possible. But what about the humanitarian part? School children, families. The bombs do not discriminate between people who support the government in Iran and those who do not. It kills everybody. So rally around the flag, nationalism, that's going to happen. Now, Iran, 90 million people, advanced economy, advanced manufacturing capabilities, advanced technologies, a very large country with enormous resources, very young population, very well educated. I mean, despite the fact that most people think that this theocratic regime is evil and all that, that's the narrative. But most of this is really not true. I mean, it's a functioning democracy, actually, with an added layer on top, on the cake, if you like, that if it didn't exist, then it'd be just a functioning democracy in real terms. But that's up to them, isn't it? Self-determination. Isn't that what Wilson talked about? Or Lenin talked about it, Wilson borrowed it. But that's what it's all about. And how is it that any democracy, especially the American Republic, the voters did not vote to destroy other countries' sovereignties? That's not what they voted for. And we see that it's only the elites that want this. And I think a very small group of elites in America, and that's the problem, isn't it? The concentration of wealth and power, media, tech, and so forth, very, very pro-Jewish, if not even owned by Jewish companies, banking. The Jewish lobby is so powerful in America, they've been able to extract enormous benefits and support. It hasn't always been easy, but they've always managed to get it. And I think that this too may be given a more serious look at if there's some public perception that Trump really has failed. And that's got to be his greatest fear. So now what's his choice? He has to declare victory and get out somehow. explain, as he said many times before, that, why do we keep all these bases? Why are we paying for this? To protect all these people when they don't pay for us, and so forth and so on. He might just say, well, look, we just really didn't need to do it, and the Israelis are guaranteeing the security over the Red Sea, from the Nile to the Euphrates, and up to Iran, and that's all we need, and now we can go and make sure we get... let's destabilize Russia, and let's then get to China. And I think this is what we're looking at in the long term. This is the American strategy, mission, if you like, and its goals are partition, partition, and partition. And it's done that selectively in the past, and it's worked for them, I suppose, to some extent, except in Vietnam, of course. There's a very real chance, I think, that with this potential failure in Iran and the Hormuz, that Trump will turn to Cuba almost immediately and go back to Greenland and then Colombia as well. He needs this victory, and he's going to do it any way he can, and that's what we can expect. But in this next 24 hours, if they really do start attacks on the electricity grid of civilian power provision in Iran, I'm not sure what's really going to happen for the Saudis and the UAE and Dubai. Desalination plants, I think water is even probably more important in the short term than oil. And it's going to take years to rebuild all of this. So what have the Americans achieved? Well, let's see. They have diminished the economic power of the whole region. That's fundamentally what they're doing here. And these people are now going to spend the next 15, 20 years to pay for all of this and rebuild all of this if they can, if the Americans and Israelis do not attack them again. So there is no humanitarian, there is no human rights, there is no moral or ethical value in here. There is nothing, calling God to your side. None of this really is important. What is important is facts on the ground and the real costs, and whether or not how voters will vote in the November midterms in America. But I think this idea of the hegemon, that you've got a hegemon, and that their democratic process then decides sovereignty for other countries around the world, is by definition not democratic in any way. And that's why the multilateral structure is threatened by the Americans, why they've withdrawn from so much, why they've skewed WTO, why they won't, why they've withdrawn from UNHCR, why they've withdrawn from UNICEF, why they've withdrawn from everything that they feel where there's the global south or socialist countries, or just not ideologically aligned, or just not aligned at all. And so open slather for the Americans. So he's going to find a victory somewhere if he can. How he's going to do this exactly is hard to say, but I think we are really at a precipice here for... I don't think this is going to be a long war like 10 years. Not like that. Not like Vietnam. No, but it could last for 1 year. I think that's possible, and possibly 2. But the Americans will have to shed blood and treasure, and I think that's going to be virtually impossible after November. So the maximum I think the war could last is up until November. And it might be that Trump really actually seeks to do that as well. That's another hypothesis. We need to develop these hypotheses and discuss them, and I'd be very pleased if my audience comes back to me with some ideas about this, and then we can discuss those further. We might even try and do a live cover on the chair for the first time. I haven't done a live yet. I've been fairly sporadic with these podcasts, and I apologize for that. It's been a little bit difficult over the last few months, a lot of travel, and clearly that's I'm not traveling much at the moment, so I can get this back, these podcasts up more regularly, and train myself to do it better, and I hope that we can all meet again for the Chair podcast. If not, there will be a podcast on small state diplomacy, a Substack that was done yesterday. That's also available in all of the other, either Spotify and YouTube and so forth. But also ASEAN Chair, visit there. There'll be a podcast there tomorrow or the day after. And so we're just going to wrap this up because we my colleagues and I, we think that this situation is not going to get better in the short term. There is no miracle here. And so it really does need deep discussion and thought and reflection. And we need to have a plan B. What are we going to do when this all does go to hell? How we're looking for a general conflagration. So I'll come back to you again with this. We'll update again as soon as possible. Thank you for joining us today, and goodbye. Thank you very much.